Hey guys, welcome to our SpiderMan Far From
We're
Home
not
review.
doing it. Anyways, we saw Spider-Man Far From Home twice. One 2 days ago in IMAX TV with lasers, and like an hour ago in AMC D-Box. Yeah, I think our general consensus is we liked it, just as plain vanilla moviegoers, not super Marvel fans or anything. However, we did see the last two Avengers and Spider-Man. And I
pretty much,
think, yeah.
and all the Marvel movies as well.
No, I haven't seen Thor. I've only seen one Thor, but
In the last year.
I generally dislike a lot of the movies I watch, and I loved Far From Home so much to where I pushed for us to see it a second time the very next day.
Which we did.
Which we did, and it was great. I really liked it mostly because I thought the plot was more original. To me, like, there are some parts where some of the reveals were expected. For example, I wasn't very surprised when Mysterio was revealed to be the villain. Mostly because I think the timing of it is what sort of gave it away.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed like almost too perfect.
Yeah,
in the beginning.
Definitely.
So that set off some red flags, but I was actually very convinced, like, of all of the elemental battles and all that. Like, I was fully believing all of that up until that point. I thought that he would turn in some other way, so the way it turned out actually really surprised me.
For me, during the first time when I watched it, I noticed that he was a very wholesome and stand-up guy. Yeah, he was honestly perfect. And I don't think I would have guessed that he was necessarily the villain or antagonist, but when they did reveal it, it wasn't surprising to me. Just because I was going through it and I was like, this movie like kind of just started. We already destroyed all the elementals. How, like, this movie can't be over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that did surprise me though was, for some reason, I thought that in the end, if Mysterio tried to kill Spider-Man, I felt like there would have been some safety protocol or procedure that prevented that from happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It seems weird that Tony put in all of these protections for different users, like whoever's using it.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't code it not to attack one of the other users. That seems kind of weird to me.
Especially since during the entire movie they're emphasizing how Tony chose Peter and Tony never second guessed Peter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if it's true that Tony did place so much faith in Peter, that he would have built something in to where, you know, that system cannot harm him.
Yeah, it also seemed like super useful, that system, so I'm surprised that we hadn't seen it before. Of course, it's like a common thing is that if you have anything new, then it might blow holes in like old stuff. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like a really strong tool that I think Tony could have been using.
I mean, I think they allude to it with Stark Industries and all the other technology he has.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't show it so definitively and so outright.
Yeah. But I think it was pretty cool. I mean, the drones seemed just super strong.
Yeah.
So I could see people being afraid of Peter because he has control of them.
Yeah, definitely. To me, it seemed like slightly irresponsible that whoever had access could just do whatever the hell they wanted, right? Especially since Peter's 16. Like, lots of times, even with, like, if you are very fortunate and have wealthy parents who give you a trust fund, you know, there are provisions like, oh, you don't get access to it until you're like, what, 25, 21? I mean, we don't know this, but, you know, Peter's 16. So it's crazy to me that there weren't like protocols in that way. But then again, this is a superhero world.
Yeah. It's like, it's a little bit sad to think that he might lose the technology that Tony gave him.
Yeah.
Because it was misused and now he's being framed and all of that.
Also, something I didn't like that I noticed the second time we watched it was at the end, during the first movie, I was under the impression that Peter forfeited his access to Edith, to Beck. So when in the end he was able to pick the glasses up and apparently you can have multiple authorized users, that surprised me, because especially when we watch it the second time and Peter says specifically, I would like to transfer you like to Beck. Transfer my access. I don't remember the exact wording.
Transfer control.
And that threw me off, and I don't think that was honestly really representative of how that exchange actually went, because it wasn't straight up like, here you go, now you have the sole power. It's more of a, hey, I'm letting you access this system.
Yeah, and it ended up being super important because he needed access in an extremely timely manner, like down to the second. And if he needed to transfer it, then it would not have turned out the same.
Yeah, like during the first time, I definitely thought that Peter would have to somehow get Beck to transfer it back to him, or it would be some weird Harry Potter wand switching masters ploy where, you know, like Peter would have to kill Beck in order to, you know, gain access again. So I didn't really like that part of it. But something that did stand out to me the first and the second time we watched it was during the first time, I remember towards the end when Peter was, you know, swinging through the city, going to pick up MJ, he took a selfie on his smartphone, and I remember thinking, like, why in the world would you do that? Because isn't that your personal, like, Peter Parker smartphone? Why would you have
big mistake
a picture of you, you know, like as SpiderMan swinging through the city? And then it stood out to me even more the second time because obviously we know the special, not so special anymore clip at the end, the first end of SpiderMan was that his identity revealed. So now I think that this selfie is going to play at least somewhat of a role in the next Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I agree. And the one way it does make sense is because MJ knows his secret, maybe he feels like he can be a little more looser with it.
But, that's true.
But still, big mistake. So it seems weird that he would live with the secret for so many years.
Yeah,
like at least a year, and then just do that kind of thing. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And then another thing, like going back to the robot thing, so there's clearly protections for like users, right? So Beck is like being protected from being attacked by the robots just inherently.
There is?
Right? Yeah, they don't want to fire like in his zone, right?
I see.
And then, so now if we figure out that he didn't actually transfer usership, then if they're both users, then why doesn't that protection apply to Peter himself?
Well, that protection is not necessarily, it might not be true because one, that was part of the simulation, right? You found out that whenever he gave that order, Peter was still in the VR world, if you will.
Okay.
And then two, technically Peter has access to the system. Granted, he didn't have the glasses. I don't know if that makes a difference. But the drones are more than willing to fire at Peter.
Yeah, that's the weird part to me. If he was like still a user this entire time.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's just whoever holds the glasses is the master, and multiple people can, you know, wear the glasses, have access to Edith. I don't know about that. But actually something else I want to discuss on the selfie part is something I noticed specifically during the second time is, during our second viewing, is that they also made the distinct point of showing Peter's text to MJ. And like the first time you're just kind of like, oh, okay, he's gonna like go pick up MJ, right? But the fact that he texted her like, oh, be there in 2 minutes, like smiley face, and she said, don't swing and text.
Yeah.
That also stood out to me.
And of course, yeah, it's like an identifying feature of being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
One of the very few.
And then also, I mean, part of me was thinking like, wow, so Peter, like, Spider-Man's gonna drop MJ off in front of Penn Station / Madison Square Garden. Like,
yeah, in broad daylight, so clearly this girl knows the identity of Spider-Man.
That's not true. Like, he could have just been like, hey, I want to go for a ride. I was thinking about that too, but it does not help MJ out.
Well, I mean, it makes her the target for it.
That's true.
She is close with Spider-Man. She's the vulnerability of Spider-Man.
Yeah. And also something else that surprised me a lot was when Mysterio or Beck and William were, you know, choreographing what was supposed to be like the ultimate Avenger level fight scene. And Beck was very violent and made threats to William. Remember, he said, oh, like no one wants a bullet in their head, and then pointed the drones at his head and, you know, said like, oh, look at me. That was surprising to me because I thought that maybe in that movie William would have a change of heart. And so it was surprising that he was the one who downloaded the footage from all the drones, edited this video to, villainize Spider-Man to the public and release it. Because I don't know, just those actions, what happened, and the threat to William, and the fact that someone else asked, oh, won't there be a lot of fatalities, when Beck said, double the impact.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I can see William potentially having a change of heart in the next movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they also threw in lines about I'll kill these kids myself.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like a pretty wrong guy. So, it's not clear to me whether or not he actually survived or if they just had that footage, were locked and loaded as a backup plan.
Oh. But something else that was interesting to me the second time was when Beck was dying. He made some comments about, people will...
Believe anything.
Believe anything, exactly. So, which made sense the second time because I think he was referring to how they're going to villainize Spider-Man to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
So
So maybe it was pre-recorded and he actually died.
Yeah, but his statement like that, him making that statement and then having that video released made me think this was much bigger than actually this band of Tony Stark fired employee misfits.
Yeah,
it made it seem much bigger, much
It's
grander.
not clear what their motivation would be to actually do that, other than they just hate superheroes. Because now they really have nothing to gain. Because if anything, the Edith will fall into the Department of Defense's hands or something like that.
Yeah. Also, something that we discussed yesterday that made me rethink was yesterday we were talking about how there's a huge flaw in this, right? Because if this is all a simulation and none of it is real, right? What is going to happen to Beck in this whole ploy when, villain does attack, right? Because a lot of it is fake. But actually it's not. Because the drones are weaponized. All the damage and the monsters they're creating is real.
Mm-hmm. The damage, yeah.
The damage is definitely real. So it'll actually be interesting to see if potentially this group of people goes up against another villain.
Yeah, and then they're just using drones to fight it off.
Yeah, but I don't think that'll be in the next film, because what does it have to do with Spider-Man's identity being revealed?
Yeah. They don't do a ton of building on top of what their actual game plan is, besides just giving Mysterio a bunch of credibility to do what? So he can just be a hero secretly, so he could just live that lie forever.
Yeah.
I don't see why would they all be in that for so deeply committed to it.
Unless they think their technology could transcend even, the current superheroes and supervillains. Because if you think about Tony Stark, and actually a lot of the heroes are purely technology, which is pretty legit. But of course, we can't forget talking about the Skrulls at the end.
Yeah.
With Nick Fury. And how that might play into the next one.
Behind an 8-minute wait, there's a second bonus scene, which I think is the first one that I've ever experienced.
Maybe we've been missing out.
Because this is the first bona fide second bonus that I've ever remembered.
Yeah. But actually, the second time we watched it, the funny thing that stood out to me was I remember when Peter was saying, oh, isn't this person available? And they're no, not available. Oh, isn't Captain Marvel available? And then what did Fury say?
He said, don't invoke her name.
Which now Fury was a Skrull the whole time. So I thought that it was funny to catch on to that the second time, right? But why do you think Fury would step back and just kind of let the Skrulls
Yeah, exactly. What are they working on? And two, why was it so important to not allocate any Avengers to this problem if the Skrull was reporting back to the real Fury this whole time?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit weird. Or was he not reporting everything and holding something back, and the Skrulls have some nefarious intentions, or they were, they didn't want any of the Avengers distracted. Or do they have ulterior motives? We don't know.
So do you think Captain Marvel will be in the next... Or do you think the next movie for this, this storyline will be a Captain Marvel, just like how they kind of went from Avengers, Captain America, Avengers, threw in some Thors, right?
Yeah, actually, I see her being part of the next one upcoming.
Like Generation 2 of Avengers.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see them sidelining her for much longer.
Yeah.
This was really just like Peter's coming of age one, if
Yeah,
anything,
definitely.
so that he fits in more with some of the other more developed characters.
Yeah.
And it was a fully solo one because I think even in the first Tom Holland Spider-Man, which I'm forgetting the name right now. Homecoming. He had a lot of help from Iron Man and other heroes, but this was really just him. So I feel like it did a good job in establishing his actual skills.
More credentials.
Yeah, more credentials.
Another line on the resume.
Exactly, which is hard to do. You could tell because they had to say, oh, all of these other people are not available.
Yeah.
So I feel like this sort of defined him a little bit better.
Yeah.
But now he's going to fit in, I think, with everybody else, and they'll be able to move on with Doctor Strange 2 and all the rest of the Marvel movies without him being sort of like a sideshow character.
He also definitely proved his dedication to being, you know, a superhero who fights for the good of society, even if that means putting his own, you know, his own preferences aside.
Yeah, I think he definitely learned that, and he also learned about how it's not really a true option to just give the responsibility to somebody else and just trust them, because you can't judge someone's character that quickly. And then, I mean, it really came down to him, and he was entrusted with this responsibility, and there can be disastrous consequences if he just hands it off to somebody else.
I wish we rewatched the bonus scene from the first Spider-Man Homecoming, but it probably didn't have to do with this one because, you know, there are Avengers movies thrown in. Anyways, overall, highly, highly, highly recommend.
Yeah,
the movie.
I would too. It was really, really good, and we're still sitting on the cliffhanger with the Skrulls, and I feel like that ties into Captain Marvel so much that I'd be surprised if they didn't address it pretty quickly. Although I think Doctor Strange 2 is going to be first.
Oh. This is probably all out there, so we might sound like idiots being like, I wonder if this is going to happen. It's like confirmed. I'm pretty sure Super Carlin Brothers
sure it's all confirmed.
Has all these theories that are definitely correct.
Someone has a calendar that's updated, so we're going to double check that. But either way, super excited for the next one.
Yeah.
This one was really a good addition.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And for a real movie review, you should check out Super Carlin Brothers, who is the duo that inspired us to at least take a stab at this. But from two very ordinary moviegoers, I'd say. Both recommend.
Don't forget to like,
comment, no, we're not subscribe, doing that.
Smash that like button, everyone.